On today's show, is Jalen Green already a top 10 shooting guard in the NBA? We're going to break it all down on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That's the best way that you can help us grow our show, is to comment anything below the video, come share your thoughts on Jalen Green, or just do a drive-by and say, "Go Rockets." It helps us out a ton. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more this summer because FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That means there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for being an everydayer. A lot to get to on today's episode. A lot of Jalen Green talk on today's episodes. We're going to be starting with the most recent rankings that came out courtesy of Hoops Hype that has Jalen Green ranked as a top 10 shooting guard going into this season. So we're going to talk about that, as well as some off-season workout videos that we've seen of Jalen Green getting some work in, currently out in Fresno preparing for another really big thing is he's prepping a Rockets players-only mini camp out in Fresno with guys like Alperen, Sengun, Jabari Smith Jr., and Amin Thompson slated to report to this mini camp. And so we're going to talk about all these different things on today's show. But we're going to start with the top 10 ranking first and then kind of go from there. So let's go ahead and start with, this is Hoops Hype is currently publishing their top 30, kind of player rankings at each position across the NBA landscape. They've already done their point guard rankings, and this is their shooting guard rankings. And Jalen Green clocks in at number 9 on their shooting guard list. So, and I do have to, let me apologize really quickly. I've got something going on with my throat. It's been super scratchy lately, so I do apologize if I have to clear my throat a few times throughout today's episode. I'll do my best to not have to do it a ton, but let's go ahead and read what they had to say about Jalen Green and then kind of unpack it from there. So this is from Hoops Hype in their ranking of Jalen Green, 9th best shooting guard in the NBA. One of the big question marks in the NBA, former number 2 overall pick Jalen Green looked like a max player for a stretch of games late in the season. Our own Mark Deeks even wrote about it back in late March, saying on Green, since March began, Green has averaged 28.5 points per game, 4th in the league behind only Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Jason Tatum, and ahead of the greats such as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Kevin Durant, and Nikola Jokic. He's done so on 50.8% shooting and with a .631 true shooting percentage, playing with unbridled confidence and coming up with big plays in the clutch, often against quality opposition. He has for 3 weeks been the nightly game-changing factor that the Rockets always hoped he would be. They continue on to say, Green eventually cooled off as the Houston Rockets missed the play-in tournament, but even so, it was a very impressive and important stretch for the G League Ignite product, who played some of the best basketball of his career during that hot run. And yet, Houston still opted not to extend him this summer. And keep it, there's still time to do that, so it's not a foregone conclusion yet that he won't get extended, but we still have mounds of evidence that Green, a career 42.1% shooter from the floor, isn't all that efficient of a player. Regardless, we're choosing to believe in that elite run of form for Green as evidenced by where we have him ranked, and think he might be able to tap into that efficient stretch from late last season more often in 2024 and 2025. After all, he's an explosive athlete with good length and skill. He just needs to get more adept with his scoring to truly take the next step. All right, so first things first, I fully agree with kind of just the analysis here from Hoops Hype. I think the biggest thing has been the consistency element with Jalen Green's game. Absolutely, that stretch in March kind of provided a renewed sense of confidence in Jalen's ability to be one of the premier guards in today's NBA. And it goes without it should go without saying, because we've talked about this a lot on the show. There were a lot of growing pains for Jalen Green in particular, a lot of adjustments that he had to make as a player over the course of last season. And ultimately, he improved in every facet of the game, except for the one area that he was supposed to always be elite at, which was his ability to score the basketball. But he improved as a playmaker, he improved as a defender, he improved across the board in every single category except for his scoring and his scoring efficiency, which those numbers took a hit, largely probably because he was so focused on growing and expanding his game elsewhere. But then when it all came together, when everything coalesced and it all came together in that month of March, he looked like one of the absolute best players in the entire NBA. So this ranking feels pretty fair. It's somewhat based on what we saw at the tail end of last season, but it's also based on the optimism and his potential going forward, that if he can tap into just, 80% of what he was in the month of March, then he's absolutely, I think, a top 10 shooting guard in today's NBA landscape. The biggest issue for Jalen has been the consistency. It's been the efficiency. The inconsistent outside shooting has been kind of detrimental to him. But when you see a player like Jalen Green, who has all the skills that he has, who has the explosive athleticism, the lightning quick first step, the high-flying ability to finish through traffic in and around the rim, either with highlight-level dunks or creative acrobatic layups, the ability to generate his shot whenever he wants, wherever he wants on the floor, but also being able to leverage that scoring gravity into opportunities for his teammates as a playmaker, something that he has continually and gradually gotten better at throughout his NBA career, operating out of the pick and roll, collapsing a defense and kicking out to wide open shooters, all these different things that Jalen brings to the table. I think it makes perfect sense that he should clock in as a top 10 shooting guard. And you look at some of the other names that are, nearby him on this list, other guys that are kind of around the same range as him: Tyler Herro at number 10, CJ McCollum at number 11, Bradley Beal at number 12, Devin Vassell at number 13. I think there are legitimate arguments for Jalen Green to be ahead of all of those guys. I think the interesting thing is to then take a look at some of the names ahead of Jalen Green on this list to see, can he pass up some of the other guys on this list? What needs to happen for Jalen Green to creep up further on this list? Can Jalen at some point this season become potentially a top 5 shooting guard? Top 3? What needs to happen for Jalen Green to take that next leap into true stardom, to become a consistent all-star presence? We're going to talk about that coming up here in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, because look, I love sports. I love them so much. I never really want them to stop, but when you got playoffs winding down and then there's no more Olympics and the sports really aren't sportsing the way you want them to, look, FanDuel lets keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That means there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Right now, you can head on over to FanDuel.com and take a look at the outright betting favorites to make the NBA play-in tournament. And right now, the Rockets are actually in a dead heat, tied for favorites with the Golden State Warriors at plus 135 to make the NBA play-in tournament in the Western Conference. That's good news for Houston Rockets fans. So for those odds, those bets, and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, so taking a look, we ran through some of the names that were behind Jalen Green on this list, and reasonably so. I think that there is a strong argument to be made that if you are leaning into the optimism, if you believe in that final stretch of the season, if you believe in that stretch from March of what we saw from Jalen Green, then I think 9 is a pretty safe place to have him ranked going into the season, ahead of some of those names like Tyler Herro, CJ McCollum, Bradley Beal, Devin Vassell. Now, who are the names currently ranked ahead of Jalen Green, and what does he need to do? What does he need to accomplish this season to leapfrog some of these names? Can he get to a place where he is widely regarded as a consensus, maybe top 5 shooting guard in the association. Hell, that would be an incredible development for Jalen Green, for the Houston Rockets. If he's playing like a top 5 shooting guard in the NBA, then there's not a chance in hell the Rockets are going to miss the play-in tournament. Like, that is absolutely best case scenario for this Houston Rockets team. So let's take a look at some of these names currently ranked ahead of Jalen Green on the Hoops Hype shooting guard ranking list. Right now, they've got Austin Reeves at number 8 with the Lakers. Reeves last season averaged just under 16 points a game, 5.5 assists, 4.3 boards. Shot 48.5% from the floor, 36.7% from 3 in 82 games. Okay, no, let's not do that. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, so we kind of ran through the names that Jalen Green is currently ranked ahead of on this Hoops Hype shooting guard ranking list. Names like Tyler Herro, CJ McCollum, Bradley Beal, and Devin Vassell. And I think, again, there's a strong argument to be made that if you're really bought into that stretch that Jalen Green had in the month of March, his play really post All-Star break, right? There was that stretch where he was, Ime Udoka was hinting at the possibility of benching Jalen Green, and then he really tapped in and locked in and turned it around to kind of close out his season. So if you believe in that stretch, if you still believe in Jalen as a player, then absolutely 9 feels like a very fair ranking, all things considered, for what we've seen out of him so far. So let's take a look at some of the names currently ranked ahead of him and kind of try and figure out what would need to happen for Jalen to leapfrog some of these names and potentially by season's end or the midway season point, whatever, be regarded as a top 5 shooting guard in the association. So right now, at number 8 on the list, they have Austin Reeves with the Lakers, and I think that's pretty fair. Austin Reeves, at least currently, similar levels of production, slightly less overall counting stats than Jalen Green. The scoring numbers are a little bit lower, but the efficiency is considerably better. Like, that's the thing with Jalen, is you look at the efficiency numbers. Only shot 42.3% from the floor, 33.2% from long distance, played all 82 games. You look at Austin Reeves, managed to shoot 48.6% from the floor and 36.7% from 3. So the efficiency is just a lot better with Austin Reeves. Now, I think he did have a little bit of a down year compared to his previous season, but 8 feels like a pretty fair ranking for Austin Reeves. And that seems like a guy with that Jalen, assuming he takes another step forward in his game this year, feels like the kind of thing where Jalen could very easily surpass Austin Reeves on this ranking list. Next guy that they have up here is Zach LaVine, ranked at number 7. Now, Zach LaVine, the efficiency numbers are a little bit closer to Jalen, so not quite as good as Austin Reeves. Zach LaVine only shot 45.2% from the floor and only 34.9% from 3. He did average 19.5 points per game, but the thing to keep in mind here, Jalen Green is making $12.5 million this next season. Austin Reeves is making just under $13 million this next season. Zach LaVine is making $43 million this next season. So from a productivity standpoint, you're getting way more out of Jalen Green and Austin Reeves than you are Zach LaVine for the cost that you are paying him. So I think from a sheer production standpoint, yeah, you can make the argument Zach LaVine at number 7 is fair, but he is easily right now one of the worst contracts in the association. The Bulls, if they want to move on from Zach LaVine, are probably going to have to attach an asset or two to be able to get rid of him. It's not looking great for things in Chicago right now. They're clearly moving in a very different direction, trying to still offload Zach LaVine, trying to move on from Nikola Vucevic. Him at 7 on this list feels almost like a reputation thing. Like, yes, Zach LaVine has been, I won't say a premier shooting guard in the NBA, but he's been one of the top tier shooting guards for a while. He's just vastly overpaid right now for what he actually provides from a production standpoint. So I think Austin Reeves and Zach LaVine are very clearly 2 guys that I think Jalen Green could and should surpass this next season, assuming things work out well, assuming he gets to a place where the efficiency looks a little bit better. More on that here in a moment, as we've had some off-season workout videos kind of show up, some things that it looks like Jalen is working on that will hopefully help him throughout this next season. But I think this is the cutoff now where things start to get really interesting, where we get into kind of the upper echelon tier of shooting guards in the association. So at number 6 on this list, they have Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane last season averaged 23.7 points per contest, 5.5 assists, 4.4 rebounds, a steal per game, shot 46.4% from the floor, 38.1% from three. Now, it's worth noting, no Ja Morant last season for the Grizzlies. Obviously, the Grizzlies had a really down year, and because there was no Ja Morant, Desmond Bane's role, his usage, was a lot higher than it would have otherwise been if Ja Morant had been healthy and available and in the Grizzlies' rotation. So with that, the numbers are probably a little bit more inflated for Desmond Bane, and also the efficiency is probably a little bit off kilter because he was the number one offensive option for the Grizzlies all of last season. So because of that, his efficiency numbers, I think, probably took a little bit of a hit. With Ja Morant coming back, with the Grizzlies, being healthy this next season, he should be more back into form, playing more of that off-ball role. Ja Morant creating and attacking defenses and creating opportunities for his backcourt running mate. Desmond Bane, that's going to be a really tough name for Jalen Green to try and creep ahead of. And that's exactly where he would need to be if he wants to start making that argument of being a top 5 shooting guard. Now, the other names on this list, again, we're in this new kind of, tier where it's going to be really hard for him to crack in. Or I should say break into this fold. Next guy, number 5 on the list, Jalen Williams from OKC. Now, I don't know how I feel about this one because Jalen Williams, to me, is more of a wing than a guard. At least they run him, they play him at small forward. Is he a guard? Is he a wing? I'll take it. I'll go with it. He's on the list as a shooting guard, sure. His efficiency is off the charts, though. Shot 54% from the floor, 42.7% from three, 19 points per contest. He's well on his way to becoming an all-star. Like, easily one of the best pickups in recent draft memory. OKC with an absolute steal there. As part of their already incredibly talented young core. One of the reasons OKC was the number 1 seed this past season. And this next set of names, this is going to be the true blue all-star list, right? Because Jalen Williams and Desmond Bane are kind of on the precipice of becoming all-stars. The numbers are absolutely there. Maybe they don't have like the popularity vote. Maybe they just don't have enough cachet to actually win an all-star selection. But these next 4 names on the list, these are going to be the guys that if Jalen starts being discussed with these names, then a lot of things have gone incredibly right this upcoming season. Jaylen Brown ranked at number 4. Donovan Mitchell ranked at number 3, Devin Booker ranked at number 2, and then Anthony Edwards ranked at number 1. And I think those are pretty much consensus, like Ant, number 1, 2 guard in the NBA, Devin Booker, number 2. I think you could maybe make a flip, argument. Donovan Mitchell, Jaylen Brown, you could flip-flop either of those guys. I could see an argument for Jaylen Brown at 3, Mitchell at 4, vice versa, either way. I think Jaylen Brown gives you a little bit more two-way potential, and I think Donovan Mitchell gives you a little bit more playmaking and creation ability than Jaylen Brown does. So it's kind of pick your poison depending on what your team needs between those two guys. But you start looking at this list, and there's a very real possibility for Jalen to creep further up here and cement himself as potentially a top 5 shooting guard in the NBA this season. And for him to do that, he's just going to have to work on the efficiency. That's kind of the big thing that holds him back. The counting numbers are absolutely there. He averaged 19.5 points per game this past season, 5.2 rebounds, 3.5 assists, just under a steal a game. It's really the efficiency metrics, right? If he can get to a place where he's shooting consistently 35, 36% from 3, and if he irons out some of the shot selection, it'll increase his overall field goal percentage, and then he should skyrocket up further this list. I think he very clearly this season will surpass guys like Austin Reeves and Zach LaVine. It's going to be a little bit tougher to start passing up some of the other names ahead of that list, of some of the other names ahead of him on the list. But I think there's a very realistic possibility for him to be considered a top 5 shooting guard by the end of the season. Now, coming up, I want to get into a couple more things here, some Jalen Green workout videos that we've seen, and kind of what it seems like him and his trainers are working on this offseason, how it'll help him next season, as well as Jalen's leadership and how he's organizing a Houston Rockets minicamp in Fresno with guys like Alperen, Sengun, Jabari Smith Jr., and Amin Thompson slated to attend. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, so first off, there are some, handful of off-season, workout videos circulating with Jalen Green, and a couple of things. It's tough to, garner any real major information from some of these workout videos when you're just looking at like a 10, 15 second clip off, somebody's IG story. But I do think that one major takeaway from some of the videos that we have seen of Jalen Green's off-season workouts, two things. He's working on his balance and he's working on his body control. And those are two very major things that I think that for Jalen in particular, if he can work on those two things and come into this next season with a little bit more control in both of those areas, it's going to do wonders for his overall game. So the first one, the body control. You saw there was a drill where you saw Jalen driving in from the right wing, or from the right baseline, I should say, and he kind of goes up and under through the paint and turns around in the paint for kind of a contested fadeaway. But the whole time he's got, a trainer, he's got a hand on his hip, he's kind of pushing him a little bit. And then he's very methodical in how he gets to that turnaround jumper and elevates and knocks it down over one of the, the little blocking tools that the trainers use to try and contest players' jump shots and everything. I think that's a really big component for Jalen's game because he's so fast, he's so electric, he moves so quickly that sometimes he is a little off kilter or a little off balance when he's attempting his shots, whether it's his midi pull-up, whether it's him snaking the pick and roll coming off a screen, whether it's him getting to his step back and trying to pull up from three. If he's not balanced, if he doesn't have a good center of gravity when he's going up for his shot, then it's really hard to maintain your proper shot mechanics, right? It's really hard to have a consistent form if you're constantly wiggling and moving the wrong way. So the body control and being able to stay being able to maintain kind of your center of gravity and being able to deal with, guys pushing you, bumping you, trying to get you, knock you off your spots or whatever, that's going to be huge for him because unfortunately for Jalen, he's never probably going to be the biggest or the strongest guy and be able to outright bully other guys. He has to rely on his quick twitch ability. He has to rely on his athleticism, his speed to get to his spots. He has to basically beat a defender to the spot that he wants to get to and then elevate for the shot that he wants rather than bulldozing past defenders like a guy like, maybe Cam Whitmore can do on a consistent basis, right? Very different players stylistically in how they get to their respective spots. So the body control element is going to be a big part of it. And then the balance, that's the other one. We've seen a couple of videos of Jalen being very methodical when he's setting up for these 3-point shots and some of these workout videos where he's taking like an extra half beat before pulling up for the shot. It's almost like a momentary pause. And a big part of what that does is it allows him to make sure that his body is set, that he's balanced going into his shot. Because if you rush it, right, if you're catching, if you're in a catch and shoot position, somebody kicks it out to you, and if you're rushing that shot, if you're not perfectly square, if you don't have your shoulders lined up, if your feet aren't planted properly, and you rush that shot, then you're not going to have your proper shooting form behind you, and you're going to struggle as a result of that. We saw Jalen Green really struggle this past season to just knock down very wide open shots, especially in the early part of the season as defenses were completely game planning against Alperen, Sengun, and Fred VanVleet as kind of the two biggest pieces of the Rockets offense to start last year. We saw a lot of missed opportunities or points left on the table because Jalen wasn't able to capitalize on some of these wide open looks that he was getting. So if he can become a more consistent outside shooter just from like wide open opportunities generated by his teammates, generated by Alperen Sengun, by Fred VanVleet, that's going to go a long ways in helping iron out some of the efficiency issues with his numbers, and that's going to bump his 3-point percentage even higher than where it's currently at. So him working on his balance, him working on his body control are two very important things that should help him out a ton this upcoming season. Now, last thing that we got here for you, Jalen actually, it was reported by Kelly Iko of The Athletic that Jalen Green is organizing a Rockets players-only mini camp. I actually have it saying, I was saying it's out in Fresno. I apologize. It's out in LA. I thought it was going to be out in Fresno. I got that mixed up. The minicamp is in LA. He's hosting a kind of a pro-am run in Fresno, his hometown, obviously where he's from. But the fact that Jalen has taken it upon himself to organize this mini camp, to bring on Rockets players. Now, it's not mandatory, right? There's no incentive to go other than to just make sure that you're in good shape, that you're getting chemistry with your teammates, that you're spending time with your future teammates, guys that maybe haven't had a chance to spend time with each other yet this offseason. We know that Alperen and Sengun went back home to Turkey for a little while, and he spends time over there every offseason. We know that Reed Shepherd and Cam Whitmore got some early chemistry playing in Rockets Summer League with each other. And then Jabari Smith Jr. and Amin Thompson, both members of the USA Select team, who there were some high praises being sung about those guys. Individually and in certain pairs, these guys have spent a lot of time working out with each other. And we know that there has been some clips courtesy of the Rockets account on social media where these guys have been working out at Toyota Center at the practice facility. We saw Alperen, Sengun, and Tari Eason kind of getting into it with a little half-court shooting competition. So they've all clearly been working out, staying on top of their craft. Also, Tari Eason, I believe, is also supposed to be at the players-only minicamp as well, courtesy of Taroya Eason, who told us that he was there, or at least arriving there. And the fact that Jalen took it upon himself to put together this minicamp, right, shows signs of his growth as a leader. And I think that's huge for Jalen, because for this Rockets team to go where they want to go, they need Jalen Green to be the guy that they thought that they were getting when they drafted him number 2 overall, right? They need him to be their number 1 scoring option. They need him to be their premier dynamic 2 guard, because at the end of the day, Alperen Sengun is absolutely incredible, and he is still currently the best player on this roster. But as we draw the comparisons, and have for so long, to Nikola Jokic and what the Denver Nuggets have accomplished, Jokic can't do what Jokic does without having his running mate in Jamal Murray. And those two only were able to achieve a championship together. We saw just how much the Nuggets have struggled in the past when Jamal Murray hasn't been healthy, when he hasn't been in the lineup. When Jokic doesn't have his running mate, it's a lot harder on him to be Nikola Jokic. He's still incredibly talented, but the margin for error becomes razor thin for the Nuggets when they don't have both of those guys playing at the top of their game. So for the Rockets to realize their full potential this next season, they need Jalen Green to be the best version of Jalen Green. And this is a great step in the right direction for him, just from an off-court perspective, to see him embracing that leadership role, to see him wanting to take some of the younger guys under his wing. Yes, he's only going into year 4 as an NBA player, but this Rockets team has given him a lot of room to operate as a leader, right? And I think this past year, especially learning from the veterans like Fred VanVleet, like Dillon Brooks, Jeff Green, learning from those guys, understanding what it takes to be a true professional in the NBA, has gone a long way in teaching a lot of these young guys and in teaching Jalen what needs to happen to achieve success. And this is that first step. I love seeing, as soon as the news came out, I love seeing that. And hopefully we get some good clips and some good footage from the players only minicamp. And hopefully it's the first in a long line of things that help build some chemistry and some cohesion with all these guys as they embark on this journey this next season to try and make it to at least the play-in tournament, but hopefully outright make it to the playoffs, right? So I want to give Jalen a lot of credit for going out there and orchestrating this. Nobody made him do it. Nobody told him to do it. And it's a great thing to see. And that's what you want to see out of a guy that you hope has the ability to be one of your franchise cornerstones. That's the kind of off the court leadership and mentality that you want out of one of your best players. So credit to Jalen for the work that he's putting in this offseason. It's going to be exciting to see how he hits the ground running this upcoming season. We want your thoughts, though, on Jalen Green, everything we talked about in this episode. Give us your thoughts on the Hoops Hype ranking. What are you most excited about for this upcoming season with the Rockets and Jalen Green? Let me know in the YouTube comments. But that's going to do it for today's episode. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave us a 5-star review if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.